Vær med og støtt dette viktige arbeidet. Gi en gave på Vips nummer 10466, eller enda bedre, bli en partner ved å gå inn på skaperkraft.no. Tusen takk for din gave. Katy, welcome to Oslo.
Thanks.
Would you just share a little bit with us? Who is Katy?
I'm a nobody. I'm a nobody. Like, I really don't have any business doing what I'm doing. I don't have any kind of a degree that, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a social worker. I didn't ever plan to be at the center of the most contentious culture war issues that we're facing today. I've really just been a pastor's wife and a mom. Like, that's been the dominant theme of the last 20 years of my life. But especially when the gay marriage debate came on the scene in my state back in 2012, and then leading up to 2015 when it went national, I saw children being victimized. I saw children being forced to sacrifice their fundamental rights, their right to be known and loved by their own mother and father, to advance this backwards notion of adult equality by redefining the most child-friendly institution the world has ever known, which is marriage. And I didn't see anybody standing up on behalf of kids. In the United States, we've got probably 100 or more organizations defending children's fundamental right to life, but nobody was defending their fundamental natural right on this side of the womb. So I just started writing independently and anonymously for the first couple years.
Why anonymously?
Because these people will eat you alive, and they'll target your family, and they'll seek to destroy you. And they did. The reason why I'm not anonymous anymore is because a gay blogger who had many more followers than I did found out where my husband was pastoring and then doxed the members of my church to get me to be quiet. And it almost worked. If we choose to share our opinions, we have to develop a thick skin. But when people that you love are made to pay for what you believe, like, it totally brought me to my knees. So
why did you keep doing what you're doing?
We needed a nonprofit that formally were going to advocate on behalf of the rights of children to their mother and father, that sought to not only give them a voice when it comes to courtroom decisions or legislation, but they deserve a voice in the culture too. They need to be represented in all of these conversations that we're having about the definition of marriage and reproductive technologies and divorce and cohabitation and polygamy and anything that connects with marriage and family and children. Kids were totally sidelined. It was adults and their identities and their interests and their longings and their feelings and their backstories that dominated the conversation, and it was always the kids that lost. So that's what we worked to do at Them Before Us, is if I do my job in this conversation, I will represent the rights and interests and well-being of children, even if it pisses off adults.
Some people might feel like you're a little hard, like there's little love here, and especially maybe to people who are gay or lesbian, but you grew up with a mom who is lesbian. Like, how are you reflecting, your own childhood and your own relationship? Do you have any love for people who are divorced, who are gay, who are wanting family?
Yeah. My parents were married until I was 10, and I was very close to both my mom and my dad. I really considered those early years to be sweet, carefree, blessed. They divorced when I was 10. They had a good divorce. So I was still in contact with both. Split time between my dad, who dated and remarried, and my mom, who very soon after their divorce repartnered with a woman. I didn't become a Christian until I was 17. So I didn't even have another framework, another way of understanding the world or marriage or family. I just knew that I loved my mom, and I loved her partner, and I loved my dad. I don't consider my mother's partner to be my mother, but I do consider her to be my friend. So this mission doesn't have to do with some kind of angst or, daddy issues from growing up. It comes from the recognition that even after the divorce, I needed my mother and my father. And no child should be deprived of their mom or dad because adult identity is being exalted above their fundamental rights.
And what do you think is at risk? What's your biggest concern?
I think if you want to kind of drill down to the main threats to children, I'll put them in three different buckets. There's cultural threats, there's technological threats, and there's legal threats. So culturally, it is this idea that when it comes to marriage and family, that any two will do, or biology doesn't matter. Kids just need to be safe and loved, or they don't need moms and dads. They just need caregivers, or the kids are resilient. They'll be able to get over whatever it is that comes their way when it comes to family loss or family breakdown, or love makes a family, right? All of these cultural ideas that really just give adults a permission slip to cut a child's mother or father out of their life, partially or completely, so adults can live as they please. Culturally, that's the biggest threat. Technologically, the greatest threat to children is the manufacturing of tiny lives in laboratories. IVF, in vitro fertilization, that allows you to mass produce children. Often people are encouraged to mass produce children, to fertilize as many little lives as possible. And when you're creating babies in a petri dish, it's just as easy to use somebody else's egg or somebody else's sperm and then put it in somebody else's womb. So in essence, you can create a designer baby that very often is built on top of the destruction of many other little lives. So technologically, that's the current greatest threat to children. And then legally, the greatest threat to children is the overhaul of marriage, which used to be cross-culturally the tool that every society has used to unite a child to both people to whom they have a natural right. And now, through no-fault divorce, gay marriage, and the normalization of polygamy, has moved faster and faster towards just being a vehicle of adult fulfillment. So there's 3 major threats to children in 3 different spheres, and none of them are marginal. They are all massive when it comes to the implications for children and the destruction on their lives.
How well documented is your views? Because you said in the podcast, it's not, yes, I believe in the Bible, but it's really just common sense.
Yeah, I don't make a scriptural case for children's right to their mother and father. I don't need to. You can do that through natural law, by just discovering what we ought to do based on looking at the natural world. So this idea that children have a right to their mother and father comes from a natural law tradition, which is a case that can be made absolutely outside of special revelation. You can make the statistical case just from the mountains of data that we have on the importance of a child's married mother and father, raising them together in a low conflict home, leading to the highest likelihood that the child is going to flourish and be exempt from so many of the social ills that all of us are concerned about, like high school dropout and criminality and teen pregnancy and teen suicide. If there is a struggle that children are facing today, drill down and you can see that that demographic is overpopulated with fatherless children. Denying children their right to their mother and father in a married home is the fastest way to ensure that they're going to deal with identity struggles, physical struggles, academic challenges, emotional diagnoses. All of it comes down to, are these children being raised in the home of their own married mother and father? If you want to talk safety, that's also a major concern. So I can make the case from natural law, from statistics. I'll just make the case from common sense. It makes sense that the 2 people responsible for the child's existence are going to be the most connected to, invested in, and protective of them. That is a case that can be made from evolutionary biologists, right? We've seen that unrelated adults statistically always increase risk of abuse and neglect for kids. There are heroic stepmothers and stepfathers that fill the gap of a missing biological parent, but on a population-wide scale, there's no family structure that swaps out a biological parent and swaps in an unrelated adult where kids do better. In fact, the risk to children with an unrelated adult in the home are so well established that we have a name for it. It's called the Cinderella effect. Unrelated adults, a stepmother, a stepfather, a new boyfriend, a new girlfriend, do not treat children the same way as they treat their own biological kids. So I can make this case in a variety of different, I can appeal to a biblical authority if you want, but I don't need to. I can appeal to an evolutionary biologist authority. I can appeal to a natural law authority. I can appeal to a statistical authority. Which one do you want? All of them point to the fact that children need, deserve, and have a right to their married mother and father.
Most people want the kids to thrive, and doing it. Why do you think this is the agenda has been pushed?
Because if we are going to advance children's right, not just their right to life, but their right to their mother and father, we come up against what I think is the most powerful force in the social world, and that is adult self-interest. If children have a right to their mother and father, that means at some point, every adult, single, married, gay, straight, fertile and infertile, at some point has to say, I am going to have my self-interest take a back seat, and I am going to put the child rights in front of my own desires. And most adults won't do that. Most adults will say, well, I want children to thrive, or maybe they'll say, I even think moms and dads matter, until it conflicts with something that they want. And then what you see is what I would consider, something in the pro-life world. A lot of people will say, well, I'm against abortion, except in 3 cases: rape, incest, and my case. Right? Everyone wants to make an exception for themselves when the rubber meets the road, and they're the ones that may not get what they want, or they're the ones whose desires might be infringed on, or they're the one whose longing might not be fulfilled if we're going to elevate the rights of children. But that's what needs to be done. Because the alternative is kids are going to sacrifice for adults. And that's what we are seeing in the cultural space, in the legal space, and the technological space. It's always kids sacrificing for adults because they can't speak for themselves. So it's very, very easy to victimize them.
And I think that will be the last word, Katy. Thank you for coming to Oslo, because our time is running up.
Good. Great to chat with you.
Og det her et veldig ømtålig tema for mange. Så jeg tenkte før vi skal høre på musikk og snakke rundt bordene, så tenkte jeg å få en liten kommentar fra 2 fine herrer. Andreas, vil du starte?
En kan ikke bare få inntrykk av det, hun sa det jo rett ut, at foreldre kan be som å masseprodusere barn gjennom sånne IVF og sånn. Av mange ting jeg kunne sagt, så vil jeg i hvert fall si det, at det er ikke inntrykket jeg har fått av de jeg har møtt. Det er en vanskelig beslutning å komme til for mange par, og når de kommer til helsevesenet, så blir de møtt på en følsom, varsom, respektabel måte, som ikke oppmuntrer til noe masseprodusering eller noe samlebånd. Det kjenner ikke jeg igjen da. Men så vil jeg også bare kommentere det at jeg tror jeg prøver å forstå ubehaget i meg ved å høre noen som er så tydelig. Og da tenkte jeg plutselig på at en gang så jeg et sånn barn leker, kjør forsiktig skilt. Og så var det noen som hadde skrevet på med tusj, voksne leker også, vi er også verdt noe. Altså at det er noe med oss voksnes litt sånn krenkbarhet når noen løfter fram barna som jeg tror vi må jobbe med da. Altså, så tross ubehag og litt sånn kontroverser, så er jeg jo takknemlig for at noen driver en organisasjon som heter Them Before Us da.
Takk. En liten kommentar fra deg.
Ja, jeg skrev en kommentarartikkel til Vårt Land før sommeren om dette. Jeg hadde egentlig skrevet en annen, og så skrev jeg den hele natten. Og jeg fikk veldig mye, ombestemte meg i siste øyeblikk, som noen ganger, før fristen. Jeg fikk veldig mye respons på den, og det jeg prøvde å sette meg inn i der, det er jo argumentene for å legalisere for eksempel surrogati i Norge, sånn som FrP har gått inn for. Og det hun beskriver gjør jo at det finnes en god del argumenter for det. For det første så er surrogati for eksempel, som hun beskriver, det er jo ville vesten på nettet, ikke sant? Du kan selge egget ditt for dyre dommer hvis du har de rette genene, og det er på en måte, det er full kaos. Og det å på en måte ta kontroll over sånne ting, kan det være et godt argument for. Det samme gjelder, men det er jo forskjell på hvis du reiser til en eller annen sånn privatklinikk et eller annet sted i verden, og så er det sånn, kanskje som hun beskriver, men i Norge er det nok ikke sånn da. Men vi trenger et dypere argument, og det er dette argumentet som hun løfter frem, som er det argumentet som står seg. Og det er at barna er først. Og at det er utrolig hvordan det perspektivet i den også samtalen i Norge er så ikke tilstedeværende. Det er veldig, veldig fascinerende egentlig, og smertefullt da, å se. Og så tenker jeg at de 100 årene før den seksuelle revolusjonen, fra 1860 til 1960, de var ikke gamle dager i allmennhet. Det var også en bevegelse som var veldig ekstrem, som dette som har kommet nå, er på en måte en oppgjør mot veldig fokus på den hvite europeiske manns overlegenhet. Kvinner som i veldig stor grad i viktorianismen ble dratt inn i klærne, og liksom snerpetehet og inn, ikke sant? Som noe helt annet enn hvordan, hva skal jeg si, Kristin Lavransdatter hoppet i høye med Erlend i 1250. At det er en legitim, på en måte noe vondt som det kommer ut av også. Ikke sant? Altså, folk som kjente på homofile følelser ble behandlet som psykiatriske pasienter på 1890-tallet. Ikke sant? Det er jo virkelig nedverdigende. Og alt det der så vi må på en måte vi må forbi denne ideen om at vi skal tilbake til det som var mellom 1860 og 1960. Og vi må alliere oss med alle gode krefter som ikke vil ha det. Hvor det var masse prostitusjon, masse skjulte aborter som ingen snakket om, i 1890, ikke sant? Ekstremt som... og vi vil ikke ha det. Vi vil ikke ha det. Så det er jo på en måte ikke... Men det er det som er så smertefullt hvis man da ønsker å ta et sånt, jeg vil kalle det et kristen perspektiv for barn. Så blir man tatt til inntekt for. Hvordan tenkte man i Wien i 1910, eller hvordan tenkte man i London i 1885, ikke sant? Og vi vil ikke ha det heller. Og det må vi våge å kritisere, vi må call it out, og på en måte takke Gud for at det faktisk tross alt ikke er sånn heller da.
En liten replikk til, så kommer Fredrik.
Jeg bare tenkte på at sånne meninger er jo veldig betente og vanskelig å ha i vår tid, kanskje fordi avstanden mellom oss er så stor. Og derfor er jeg så takknemlig for dette rommet, hvor vi kommer sammen. Og avstanden blir mindre, og vi ser at jo, men den meningen han hadde, den var ikke så skarp, og han var faktisk hyggelig, og vi lunsja. Og Så jeg vil bare benytte anledningen til å takke for at vi har fått dette rommet til å møtes.
Så fint. Da kan vi... Tusen takk for kommentarene.
Tankesmien Skaperkraft er mulig takket være folkefinansiert støtte fra våre partnere og givere.
Vær med og støtt dette viktige arbeidet. Gi en gave på Vips nummer 10466, eller enda bedre, bli en partner ved å gå inn på skaperkraft.no. Tusen takk for din gave.